stop this plan. I have too much labor pain.
Oh, come on.
You need to sit down now!
Know your place. Security will handle you. You're exaggerating for attention. Stop making a scene.
The cabin lights dimmed as flight attendant Monica Chen's voice cut through the hum of the aircraft engines. "Ma'am, you need to return to your seat immediately. We're about to begin our descent into Chicago." Dr. Amara Williams gripped the armrest, her knuckles whitening as another contraction seized her body. Sweat beaded on her forehead, her breath coming in sharp, controlled bursts. The pain radiated from her lower back, wrapping around her abdomen like a vice tightening with each passing second. "I can't," Amara gasped, her voice barely audible over the ambient noise. "Something's wrong, the baby." Monica's eyes narrowed, her lips pressing into a thin line of irritation. She glanced at her colleague, Derek Walsh, who stood near the galley with his arms crossed, watching the scene with barely concealed contempt. "Ma'am, if you're feeling unwell, you should have informed us before boarding," Monica said, her tone sharp and dismissive. "Now sit down before I have to call the captain." Passengers in nearby rows began to turn, their faces a mixture of concern and curiosity. An elderly white woman in 12C leaned toward her husband, whispering loud enough for others to hear. "Why do they always cause a scene?" Amara's dark eyes filled with tears, not from the pain alone, but from the sudden realization that she was facing something far more dangerous than premature labor. She was facing indifference, hostility, the kind that could cost her everything. "Please," she whispered, her hand moving protectively over her swollen belly. "I'm a doctor. I know my body. Something is seriously wrong." Derek Walsh stepped forward, his 6-foot frame towering over Amara's seated position. "Listen, lady, we've all heard the excuses. You're making other passengers uncomfortable. Either sit down, or we'll have security waiting when we land." The fluorescent lights overhead seemed to pulse with Amara's heartbeat. 37 weeks pregnant, she'd taken this flight from Los Angeles to Chicago for an emergency consultation at Northwestern Memorial Hospital, where she served as the head of the maternal fetal medicine department. Her patients needed her. Her research team was waiting. She'd calculated every risk, consulted with her own physicians, received clearance to fly. But she hadn't calculated for this. Where are you from? Tell us in the comments below. And if you're loving this story, hit that like button and subscribe for more. Another contraction hit, stronger this time, stealing her breath entirely. Amara's hand shot out, gripping the seat in front of her. The passenger there, a young man with headphones, jerked forward, annoyed by the disturbance. "What the hell?" he muttered, turning to glare at her. Monica's radio crackled. "Flight attendants prepare cabin for descent, 15 minutes to landing." "You heard that," Monica said coldly. "Buckle up now." Amara Josephine Williams had been born in a small town outside of Atlanta, Georgia, where her grandmother had worked as a midwife, bringing hundreds of bobbies into the world with nothing but skill, intuition, and hands worn smooth by decades of service. Her mother, Patricia Williams, had been a nurse at the county hospital, working double shifts to afford Amara's private school education. Her father had died when Amara was 6, a construction accident that left her mother a widow at 32. Growing up, Amara had watched her mother navigate a healthcare system that often dismissed Black women's pain, that statistically provided them with less adequate care, that resulted in maternal mortality rates 3 to 4 times higher than their white counterparts. She'd watched her grandmother deliver bobbies in homes because some families didn't trust the hospitals, didn't feel safe there, didn't feel heard. At 7 years old, Amara had declared she would become a doctor. Not just any doctor, but one who would change the statistics, who would fight for women who looked like her grandmother, like her mother, like herself. She'd graduated top of her class from Spelman College, earned her medical degree from Johns Hopkins, completed her residency at Massachusetts General Hospital, and her fellowship in maternal fetal medicine at UCLA. By 34, She was running one of the most prestigious maternal health programs in the country, published in every major medical journal, consulted by the CDC on prenatal care protocols. Dr. Amara Williams didn't just treat high-risk pregnancies. She saved lives. She developed screening protocols that had reduced preeclampsia complications by 40% in her hospital system. She'd testified before Congress about racial disparities in maternal health care. She'd won awards, grants, recognition from medical societies worldwide. And now, at 37,000 feet, carrying her first child, none of it mattered. The flight attendant saw a black woman making a fuss, a problem to be managed, a disturbance to be contained. They didn't see Dr. Williams. They didn't see the woman who'd spent the last decade fighting to ensure that women like her received the care they deserved. They saw what they'd been conditioned to see, what implicit bias had taught them to see. A threat, an inconvenience, someone who didn't belong in first class despite the ticket she'd purchased with her own money. Amara's best friend and medical partner, Dr. Sarah Chen, had driven her to Lax that morning, protesting the entire way. "You're cutting it too close," Sarah had said, gripping the steering wheel tightly. 37 weeks, Amara, you should be resting, not flying across the country." "The Jensen twins need me," Amara had replied, her hand resting on her belly. "Monoamniotic twins at 28 weeks. They won't make it without the right protocol. I developed that protocol, Sarah. I have to be there to supervise the delivery." Sarah had pulled up to the departure terminal, her eyes filled with worry. "Promise me you'll call if anything feels off, anything at all." Amara had promised. She'd hugged her friend, grabbed her carry-on bag containing her laptop, medical files, and the ultrasound photos of her daughter, Zara. She'd checked in, passed through security, boarded the plane. The flight had been smooth for the first 3 hours. Amara had worked on her laptop, reviewing protocols, answering emails from her team. She'd felt fine, strong, confident. Then somewhere over Colorado, she'd felt the first twinge, a tightening across her abdomen lasting 30 seconds, then fatting. She'd noted the time, 2:47 p.m. Braxton Hicks contractions, she'd told herself, normal, expected. But 20 minutes later, another had come, and another 20 minutes after that. By the time the plane began its initial descent into Chicago, the contractions were coming every 15 minutes, each one stronger, each one lasting longer. That's when she'd pressed the call button. That's when Monica Chen had arrived, looked at her with cold, dismissive eyes, and changed everything. "I need medical assistance," Amara said, her voice stronger now despite the pain. She reached for her purse, trying to extract her medical identification, her hospital credentials. "I'm a physician. I'm experiencing preterm labor contractions. I need—" "What you need is to calm down and follow instructions," Derek interrupted, his hand reaching for her shoulder as if to physically push her back into her seat. Amara jerked away from his touch, her eyes flashing with anger. "Don't touch me. I'm telling you as a medical professional that I need immediate assistance. This baby could be in distress." Monica's expression hardened. She pulled out her radio again. "Captain, we have a disruptive passenger in first class refusing to comply with safety instructions." "I'm not being disruptive." Amara's voice rose, desperation creeping in. "I'm having a medical emergency." Several passengers had removed their headphones now, watching the confrontation unfold. A middle-aged white man in 10A called out, "Can't you just do what they ask? Some of us have connections to make." Another woman, younger with long blonde hair, pulled out her phone, recording. Derek noticed immediately. "Ma'am, put that away. You can't record on this aircraft." "It's not illegal to record," the blonde woman shot back. "And I think someone needs to document this." Monica's face flushed red. "Final warning, return to your seat and buckle your seatbelt, or we will have you arrested upon landing." Amara felt the walls closing in. The pain, the dismissal, the threat, it all crashed together in a wave of helplessness that she'd spent her entire life fighting against. She thought of her mother, her grandmother, all the women who'd been silenced, ignored, left to suffer because their pain wasn't taken seriously. Not this time, not today. not with her daughter's life hanging in the balance. She unbuckled her seatbelt and tried to stand, her legs shaking. I need to lie down. I need someone to check my vitals. I need. The contraction that hit was different from the others. Sharper, deeper, accompanied by a sudden, terrifying gush of warm fluid that soaked through her clothing. Her water had broken. Amara looked down at the spreading wetness, then up at Monica's face, where disgust had replaced irritation. "Oh, for God's sake," Monica muttered. "Derek, get me towels now." But there was no concern in her voice. No urgency. Just annoyance, as if Amara had deliberately created this mess to inconvenience them. Amara's medical training kicked in through the fear. Water breaking at 37 weeks, sudden onset on an aircraft with limited medical equipment. Potential complications, cord prolapse, infection, rapid labor progression, fetal distress. "You need to tell the captain to make an emergency landing," Amara said, her voice shaking. "This is serious. We need to get on the ground, now." Monica laughed, actually laughed. "An emergency landing? Do you have any idea what that costs, what it would do to the other passengers?" "I don't care about the cost," Amara shouted. "My baby could die." Derek returned with a handful of thin paper towels, tossing them onto Amara's lap like she was a spill to be cleaned up. "Here, try not to make more of a mess." The cabin had gone completely silent now. Every eye was on them. Some passengers looked horrified, others uncomfortable. A few seemed angry, as if Amara's medical emergency was a personal affront to their travel plans. An older black woman 3 rows back stood up, her voice carrying clear and strong. "That woman needs help. Are y'all blind? She's in labor." "Ma'am, please sit down," Monica said automatically. "I'm a retired nurse," the woman continued, ignoring the instruction. "Let me through. She needs someone who will actually help her." But Derek positioned himself in the aisle, blocking her path. "Everyone needs to remain seated. The captain will handle this." Amara felt another contraction building, this one so powerful she couldn't suppress the groan that escaped her lips. She doubled over, her hands gripping the armrests, her entire body trembling. Through the pain, she heard Monica on the radio again. "Captain, passenger is creating a major disturbance. Possible medical situation, but I believe she's exaggerating for attention. Request permission to restrain if necessary." Restrain. The word echoed in Amara's mind like a death sentence. She'd read the reports, knew the statistics. Black women handcuffed during labor. Black mothers dying in hospitals because their pain wasn't believed. Black patients assumed to be drug-seeking when reporting legitimate symptoms. And now it was happening to her, despite her credentials, her education, her expertise. None of it protected her from the bias embedded so deeply in the system that even at 37,000 feet, it found her. Amara lifted her head, meeting Monica's eyes with a gaze that held both fury and determination. "You're making a mistake, a terrible mistake. When this plane lands, people will know what you've done here." Monica's smile was cold. "Is that a threat?" "It's a promise." The plane shuddered as it hit a patch of turbulence, and Amara's body lurched forward. Pain exploded through her pelvis, radiating down her legs. She cried out, unable to contain it, and felt something shift inside her, something that sent alarm bells ringing through her medical consciousness. The baby had dropped. Labor was progressing fast. "Please," Amara begged, abandoning pride for the sake of her child. "Please, I'm begging you, something's wrong. I can feel it. Just ask the captain to radio ahead for an ambulance. That's all I'm asking." Monica crossed her arms. "We're already radioing ahead for security." The retired nurse in the back had managed to push past Derek in the moment of turbulence. She knelt beside Amara's seat, her warm hands taking Amara's cold ones. "I'm Gladys," she said softly. "I'm here, baby, you're not alone." Tears streamed down Amara's face. "Thank you, thank you." Gladys looked up at Monica with barely contained rage. "This woman needs medical attention. Now, not security, an ambulance, paramedics, a hospital." "And who are you to make that determination?" Derek challenged. "I'm someone with basic human decency," Gladys shot back. Something you two seem to lack. Monica's radio crackled again. The captain's voice, tinny and distant. Flight attendants prepare for landing, 8 minutes out. 8 minutes? Amara counted the seconds between contractions, 6 minutes. They were coming faster, much too fast. She thought of her hospital in Chicago, of her team, of the emergency protocols she'd spent years developing. She thought of all the women she'd fought for, advocated for, saved. And she realized that none of that mattered to the people who held power over her in this moment. She was just another black woman, crying out in pain, being told she was overreacting, being dismissed, being threatened. But there was something Monica and Derek didn't know, couldn't know, something that would change everything once they landed. Dr. Amara Williams wasn't just the head of maternal fetal medicine at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. She was the architect of the Safe Motherhood Initiative, a federal program that had been adopted by 43 states. She'd consulted for the FAA on in-flight medical emergency protocols. She'd advised 3 presidential administrations on maternal health policy. She sat on the board of the airline whose plane she was currently on. Her husband, Judge Marcus Williams, was one of the most respected federal judges in the 7th Circuit. Her best friend, Sarah Chen, was already on the phone with the hospital, with the airline's CEO, with the media contacts they'd cultivated over years of advocacy work. This wasn't just a medical emergency being mishandled. This was about to become a national incident. But in that moment, trapped in seat 8A with her water broken and contractions accelerating, Amara couldn't think about any of that. She could only think about her daughter, about keeping Zara safe, about surviving the next 8 minutes. Gladys squeezed her hand. "Breathe with me, honey, in through your nose, out through your mouth, that's it." The plane began its final descent. Through the window, Amara could see the lights of Chicago emerging through the twilight, a sprawling constellation of promises and possibilities. She'd been so excited to see this view, to return to the city that had become her home, to the hospital where she'd built her life's work. Now she saw it through a haze of pain and fear, wondering if she'd even make it to the ground alive. Monica moved to her jump seat, strapping in for landing. Derek did the same. Neither looked at Amara again. The blonde woman was still recording, her phone angled to capture everything. Other passengers had their phones out too now, some recording, some texting, some posting to social media in real time. This moment was being documented, witnessed, preserved. But what happened next changed everything. The wheels hit the tarmac with a jarring thud that sent another wave of pain through Amara's body. She gripped Gladys's hand so tightly she worried about breaking bones, but the older woman never flinched, never pulled away. The plane taxied toward the gate, each second stretching into eternity. Through the window, Amara could see something unusual. Instead of the typical ground crew, there were vehicles with flashing lights. Multiple vehicles, ambulances, police cars, fire trucks, news vans. The entire terminal seemed to be lit up like a disaster scene. Monica noticed too. She stood up, her face paling as she peered through the cockpit door window. "Derek, what's going on out there?" Derek moved to look, his swagger from earlier evaporating. "I don't know. That's way more response than we called for." The captain's voice came over the intercom, crisp and professional. "Flight attendants, prepare for emergency medical response. Ground crew, you are cleared to board immediately upon door opening." Monica's radio exploded with chatter. "Flight 2847, this is ground control. We have full emergency medical team standing by. Patient is Dr. Amara Williams, is that correct?" Monica's head snapped toward Amara, her eyes wide. "Doctor? Did they just say doctor?" The radio continued. "Patient's medical team from Northwestern Memorial is on site. Judge Williams is here. We're also receiving inquiries from the FAA, airline headquarters, and multiple media outlets. Please confirm patient status." Derek's face had gone ashen. "Judge Williams, as in Judge Marcus Williams." Amara, through the pain, managed a small smile. "My husband, You might want to rethink that security escort you were planning." The plane came to a stop at the gate, but the normal sound of seatbelts unclicking was absent. Every passenger remained frozen, watching, sensing that something monumental was unfolding. The cabin door opened with a pneumatic hiss, and the narrow space suddenly flooded with people. Real medical professionals, EMTs in uniform, paramedics with equipment, and in the midst of them, a tall black man in a sharp suit, his face etched with worry that transformed to relief the moment he saw Amara. "Baby," Marcus Williams breathed, pushing past the flight attendants to reach his wife. He dropped to his knees beside her seat, his hands immediately going to her face. "I'm here, you're safe now." Behind him came a woman in surgical scrubs, her dark hair pulled back, her eyes already assessing Amara's condition with professional precision. Dr. Sarah Chen, still wearing her hospital ID badge. "Amara, how far apart are the contractions?" Sarah asked, her hands already checking pulse, examining. 4 minutes, Amara gasped. "Water broke about 15 minutes ago. I think the baby dropped during descent." Sarah's face tightened. She turned to the EMTs. "We need to move her now. Get the stretcher in here, carefully." Monica stood frozen in the galley, her face cycling through expressions of confusion, denial, and dawning horror. "But she didn't tell us she was a doctor. She didn't show any identification." Marcus Williams slowly turned to face her, and the temperature in the cabin seemed to drop 20 degrees. His voice, when he spoke, was quiet but carried the weight of authority that came from a lifetime of delivering judgment. "My wife was experiencing a medical emergency. She told you she was a doctor. She told you she needed help, and your response was to threaten her with restraint and arrest." "We thought," Derek started. "I don't care what you thought," Marcus interrupted, his voice still quiet but now edged with steel. "My wife told you she was having a medical emergency. That should have been enough." The EMTs had the stretcher positioned now. They worked with practiced efficiency, transferring Amara from the seat onto the padded surface. An oxygen mask went over her face. Monitors were attached. IV lines started. Sarah walked alongside the stretcher as they began moving toward the exit. She paused next to Monica, her expression cold. "I hope you have a good lawyer, because by the time we're done documenting this incident, you're going to need one." As they wheeled Amara down the jet bridge, she could see through the window into the terminal. What she saw made her gasp even through the pain. The terminal was packed, not just with medical personnel but with administrators, hospital staff, and at least 6 news crews, cameras rolling, reporters speaking into microphones. The terminal manager, a white man in his 50s with salt and pepper hair, rushed forward. "Dr. Williams, I'm Jonathan Pierce. I'm so sorry for what happened. The airline is launching a full investigation immediately." But Amara's attention was caught by someone else. A woman in an expensive suit, her gray hair perfectly styled, her face grim as she walked directly toward the plane. Eleanor Morrison, CEO of the airline. Marcus saw her too. "Eleanor received my call about 40 minutes ago. She flew in from New York on the company jet." Eleanor Morrison didn't stop at the terminal. She walked straight onto the plane, her heels clicking against the floor with the sound of approaching judgment. The passengers who were still seated, who had witnessed everything, watched in stunned silence as the CEO of the airline they were flying on stepped into the cabin. Eleanor's eyes found Monica and Derek immediately. "You too, with me now." Monica's voice shook. "Ms. Morrison, we were just following protocol." "Following protocol?" Eleanor's voice could have frozen fire. "I've been reviewing the radio transcripts. I've been listening to the recordings from the cockpit communications. You were informed by multiple passengers that this woman was experiencing a medical emergency. You dismissed her concerns. You threatened her with restraint. You mocked her. And you did all of this while she was in premature labor." Derek tried to speak. "We didn't know she was." "A doctor," Eleanor finished. "Is that supposed to matter? Should she have needed to present credentials to receive basic human compassion, to have her medical emergency taken seriously?" She turned to address the entire cabin, her voice projecting clearly. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of this airline, I apologize that you had to witness such a disgraceful display of incompetence and prejudice. Your flight will be fully refunded, and you will each receive compensation for this experience. Then she turned back to Monica and Derek. You're both terminated, effective immediately. Security will escort you from the premises. You'll receive formal notification of termination within 24 hours, along with the details of the investigation and potential legal action. Monica's face crumbled. You can't do this. I've worked here for 12 years. 12 years? Alina repeated. 12 years, and you still haven't learned that every passenger deserves dignity and care. That when someone tells you they're having a medical emergency, you believe them. That implicit bias can kill people. The blonde woman who'd been recording stood up, holding out her phone. Ms. Morrison, I recorded the entire interaction. I'd like to submit it as evidence for Dr. Williams. Thank you, Alina said, taking down the woman's information. Your courage in documenting this will help ensure nothing like this happens again. Another passenger, a black man in a business suit, stood. I also recorded portions of the incident, and I'd like to add that I spoke up early, trying to get them to help her, and I was threatened with being added to the no-fly list. Alina's jaw clenched. Names, I need all your names and contact information. We're going to make this right. Back in the terminal, Amara was being loaded into an ambulance. Sarah climbed in beside her, checking monitors, making notes. Marcus held Amara's hand, his other hand on his phone, already coordinating. Michael Chen is handling the press, he told her, referencing his chief of staff. Sarah's team is prepped for emergency delivery. We're 3 minutes from Northwestern. Another contraction hit, this one so powerful that Amara arched off the stretcher, crying out even through the oxygen mask. Sarah checked her watch, then examined Amara with experienced hands. Her face went very still. Marcus, she's at 8 centimeters. We might not make it to the hospital in time. What? Marcus's face drained of color. Can you hear? If I have to, Sarah said grimly, but I'd really prefer not to deliver a baby in an ambulance. She leaned forward, speaking to the driver through the partition. Lights and sirens. Fast as you can. Call ahead and tell them we need a delivery room prepped and waiting at the emergency entrance. The ambulance lurched forward, siren wailing. Through the back windows, Amara could see the news vans following, a convoy of witnesses to her nightmare and her vindication. Her phone, which Marcus had retrieved from her purse, began ringing incessantly. He glanced at the screen. It's the hospital board chairman and the mayor's office, and CNN. Jesus, Amara, this is everywhere already. Social media, Sarah said, not looking up from her monitoring. Those passengers were posting in real time. This went viral while you were still in the air. Amara closed her eyes, another contraction building. Through the pain and fear, she felt something else rising. Not satisfaction, exactly, not vindication, something deeper. This moment, this horrible, terrifying moment, was exactly why she'd spent her career fighting. This was what happened when black women's pain wasn't believed, when medical concerns were dismissed, when bias overrode basic human compassion. She'd experienced it herself now, despite everything she'd achieved, everything she'd built. And if it could happen to her, with her credentials and connections and platform, what happened to the women who had none of those protections? We're documenting everything, Marcus said, reading her thoughts as he always could. Sarah's already drafted a statement. The hospital's public relations team is coordinating with our communications director. By morning, every major news outlet will have the full story. Good, Amara whispered, because this isn't just about me. It's about every woman who's been dismissed, ignored, threatened when they needed help. The ambulance screeched to a halt at Northwestern's emergency entrance. The doors flew open, and Amara was pulled out into a flood of activity. Nurses, doctors, orderlies, her team, the people she'd trained and mentored and worked alongside for years. Dr. Patricia Johnson, head of the Obgyn department, took one look at Amara and barked orders. Delivery room 3. It's already prepped. Get her in there now. Someone page anesthesia, and somebody find out if our neonatal specialist is still in the building. As they rushed through the corridors, Amara saw staff members stopping, staring, their faces showing shock and concern. Word had spread. Everyone knew what had happened. A young resident, tears streaming down her face, called out, "We've got you, Dr. Williams, we've got you." They burst through the delivery room doors. Bright lights, the smell of antiseptic, the organized chaos of a medical team preparing for an emergency delivery. Patricia was already scrubbing in. "Sarah, you're assisting. Marcus, you can stay if you want, but you need to gown up now." Amara was transferred to the delivery bed, monitors attached, IV adjusted. Through the window, she could see people gathering, hospital staff, administrators, a hospital security guard keeping reporters at bay. Another contraction, the worst yet. Sarah checked her dilation. "Patricia, she's fully dilated. This baby's coming now." Patricia moved into position, her experienced hands gentle but firm. "Okay, Amara, I know you know how this works, but I'm going to walk you through it anyway. On the next contraction, I need you to push. Hard." Marcus was beside her now, gowned and masked, his hand gripping hers. "I'm here, baby, I'm right here." The contraction built like a wave, and Amara bore down, pushing with everything she had. The pain was immense, but it was different from the pain before. This was productive. This was her body doing what it was designed to do, bringing her daughter into the world. "Good," Patricia coached. "Again, next contraction, big push." Between contractions, Amara heard sounds from outside the delivery room, raised voices. The hospital CEO had arrived. Eleanor Morrison from the airline was demanding updates. News crews were being forcibly removed from the building. But inside this room, none of that mattered. There was only the work of birth, ancient and urgent, the process that Amara had dedicated her life to protecting and improving. "I can see the head," Patricia announced. "One more big push, Amara, maybe two." Sarah was at her other side, monitoring the baby's heart rate, watching the machines, her medical mind tracking everything even as her friend's hand held Amara's shoulder. The next contraction came, and Amara pushed with a strength she didn't know she possessed, fueled by adrenaline and determination and the fierce love of a mother for her child. And then, in a rush of pressure and release, her daughter was born. The sound of crying filled the room. Not Amara's tears anymore, but the strong, healthy wail of a newborn announcing her arrival. "It's a girl," Patricia said, though everyone already knew. 7 pounds, 3 ounces, strong lungs, all fingers and toes accounted for. They placed Zara on Amara's chest, the tiny, squirming weight of her, the warmth of her, the miracle of her. Marcus was crying openly now, his hand on his daughter's head, both of them in awe of what they'd created. "She's perfect," he whispered. "She's absolutely perfect." Amara looked down at her daughter, at the tiny face still scrunched from birth, at the small hands already grasping. Safe, healthy, here. Despite everything, despite the callousness and the cruelty and the dismissal, Zara had made it. They'd both made it. But Amara knew this was just the beginning. The real work was about to start. The next morning, Amara woke in a private hospital room flooded with flowers. Arrangements covered every surface, spilling out into the hallway. Cards, gifts, messages of support from colleagues, patients, advocacy groups, complete strangers who'd heard her story. Marcus was asleep in the chair beside her bed, still in yesterday's suit, rumpled and exhausted. Zara slept peacefully in her bassinet, swaddled in hospital blankets. On the television mounted to the wall, tuned to low volume, Amara's face looked back at her from every news channel. "Breaking news, airline staff ignored doctor in labor," read one chyron. "Black physician threatened during medical emergency," proclaimed another. "CEO fires flight attendants after viral incident," announced a third. Amara's phone, charging on the bedside table, showed 347 missed calls and over 1,000 text messages. Sarah had left a note beside it. "Don't look at social media yet. Get some rest first. I'll handle the press." But Amara was curious. She opened Twitter with one hand, scrolling carefully. The videos were everywhere, multiple angles from multiple passengers. The blonde woman's recording had been viewed 27 million times. Hashtags had formed: Believe Black Women, Justice for Dr. Williams, Fly While Black. Medical organizations were issuing statements. The American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, the Association of Black Cardiologists, the National Medical Association, all expressing outrage, all demanding accountability, all pointing to this incident as proof of the implicit bias they'd been warning about for years. Politicians were weighing in: senators, representatives. The governor had released a statement calling for federal investigation into airline policies regarding in-flight medical emergencies. And the airline, God, the airline. Eleanor Morrison had held a press conference at midnight. The video showed her, no longer in her suit but in casual clothes, looking exhausted and furious. What happened to Dr. Williams is unconscionable, she told the assembled reporters. It represents a catastrophic failure of our training, our culture, and our values. I take full responsibility as CEO for allowing conditions where such bias could flourish. The 2 flight attendants involved have been terminated. We are conducting a comprehensive review of all our training protocols, with a specific focus on implicit bias and medical emergency response. We are also reaching out to Dr. Williams and her legal team to discuss appropriate compensation and any other actions she feels are necessary. A reporter had asked if the airline was worried about a lawsuit. Eleanor's response had been swift. We should be sued. What happened to Dr. Williams and her unborn child could have resulted in tragedy. If she chooses to take legal action, we will not fight it. We will accept responsibility and work to ensure this never happens again. The honesty had been startling, refreshing, and strategic. Eleanor was clearly trying to get ahead of an even bigger scandal. There was a knock on the door. Sarah entered, carrying coffee and looking like she hadn't slept at all. You're supposed to be resting, she said without preamble, noticing Amara's phone. I needed to see, Amara replied. Sarah set down the coffee and checked Zara's vitals with practiced efficiency. Well, since you're awake, you should know that the hospital board wants to meet with you. The mayor's office has called. 3 different law firms specializing in civil rights cases have offered their services pro bono, and Opera's people called. Amara's eyebrows rose. Opera wants you on the show as soon as you're ready. So does Ellen, The View, Rachel Maddow, everybody. Sarah sat down on the edge of the bed. Amara, this is huge. It's not just about what happened to you. It's become a national conversation about bias in healthcare, about how Black women are treated, about institutional racism. I know, Amara said softly. She looked at her sleeping daughter. I just wanted to have my baby. I didn't want to become a symbol. Too late for that, Sarah said, but her voice was gentle. The question is, what do you want to do with it? Amara thought about her grandmother, delivering babies in homes because hospitals weren't safe. Her mother, working double shifts to survive. All the women she'd treated over the years who told her stories of being dismissed, ignored, endangered by the very system that was supposed to protect them. I want to use it, she said finally. All of it, the attention, the outrage, the moment. I want to push for real change. Sarah smiled. I thought you might say that, so I took the liberty of drafting a proposal. New federal regulations for in-flight medical emergencies. Mandatory implicit bias training for all airline staff, with regular recertification. An independent review board for complaints, and a public awareness campaign about maternal health disparities. When did you have time to draft all that? I didn't sleep, Sarah admitted. But Amara, we have momentum right now, real momentum, the kind that comes once in a generation. We need to channel it into action before the news cycle moves on. Marcus stirred in his chair, waking slowly. His eyes found Amara, then Zara, and relief flooded his features all over again. How are my girls? He asked, his voice rough with sleep. Planning a revolution, Sarah answered before Amara could speak. Marcus laughed, then stood to kiss his wife. Of course you are. You just gave birth 12 hours ago. The work doesn't stop because I had a baby, Amara said. If anything, it's more urgent now. I'm fighting for Zara's future, for the world she's going to grow up in. Another knock on the door. This time it was the hospital's chief administrator, Dr. Raymond Torres, along with the head of public relations and the hospital's legal counsel. Dr. Williams, Torres began, his face grave. We need to discuss how Northwestern Memorial should respond to this incident. You mean you need to protect the hospital from liability, Marcus said, his judge voice emerging. That too, Torres admitted. But also, Amara, you're one of our most valued physicians. You've built programs here that have saved countless lives. We want to support you in whatever way we can, both personally and professionally. The legal counsel, a sharp-eyed woman named Jennifer Park, pulled out a folder. We've already been contacted by the airline's lawyers. They want to settle quickly and quietly. They're offering a substantial sum. How substantial? Marcus asked. Jennifer named a figure that made Amara blink. That's guilt money, she said. They want me to sign an NDA and go away quietly. That's my assessment as well, Jennifer agreed. But I wanted you to know the offer is on the table. Amara looked at Marcus, then at Sarah, then down at her sleeping daughter. No, she said firmly. No settlement with an NDA. If they want to settle, fine, but it has to be public, full transparency. And the money doesn't go to me. It goes to establishing a foundation for maternal health advocacy, specifically focused on addressing racial disparities. Torres looked surprised. You don't want to keep any of it. I don't need their money, Amara said. I need their accountability. I need them to admit what happened, why it happened, and what they're doing to fix it. Not in a private settlement agreement, but publicly, where other airlines will have to pay attention. Jennifer Park smiled. I can work with that. I'll draft a counter-proposal this afternoon. There's something else, Sarah interjected. She pulled out her tablet, showing a petition that had formed overnight. 300,000 signatures already, calling for federal legislation addressing in-flight medical discrimination. Representative Martinez is drafting a bill. They want to call it the Amara Williams Act. The room fell silent. Amara stared at the screen, at her name attached to potential legislation, at the possibility of her nightmare becoming the catalyst for real change. They want you to testify before Congress, Sarah continued. As soon as you're recovered, they want your expertise, your story, your voice. Amara thought about Monica Chen and Derek Walsh, about the dismissal in their eyes, the contempt in their voices. She thought about all the women who'd experienced the same thing, but without her platform, without her connections, without the ability to fight back. Yes, she said, I'll testify, I'll tell my story, and I'll make damn sure that no other woman has to go through what I went through. 3 weeks later, Amara Williams stood in the Russell Senate office building, Zara asleep in a carrier against her chest. The hearing room was packed. Senators, media, advocacy groups, medical professionals, representatives from every major airline. Monica Chen and Derek Walsh were there too, sitting in the back row with their lawyers, looking small and diminished. Eleanor Morrison sat in the front row, her face composed but her eyes never leaving Amara. The committee chairman, Senator Patricia Hernandez, gavelled the hearing to order. We're here today to discuss the urgent issue of medical discrimination in air travel, specifically regarding pregnant passengers and women of color. Dr. Williams, thank you for being willing to share your experience with us. Amara stepped to the microphone. She'd prepared her testimony carefully, working with Sarah and Marcus to strike the right balance between personal narrative and policy prescription. Thank you, Senator. My name is Dr. Amara Josephine Williams. I am the head of maternal fetal medicine at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. I have dedicated my career to ensuring that pregnant women, particularly Black women, receive the quality of care they deserve. On the evening of November 15th, I became a statistic I've spent my career trying to prevent. She told her story, not with emotion or dramatics, but with clinical precision, laying out each failure point, each moment where proper protocols were ignored, each instance where bias overrode medical judgment. The room was absolutely silent as she spoke. Several people were crying openly. The senators looked increasingly grim. When she finished the narrative portion, she moved into her recommendations. Mandatory training, independent oversight, clear protocols for medical emergencies, accountability measures for staff who ignore medical concerns, protection for passengers who document incidents of discrimination. But beyond policy, she concluded, we need a cultural shift. We need to believe women when they say something is wrong with their bodies. We need to believe Black women, in particular, who have been systematically dismissed by medical systems for generations. My credentials, my education, my position, none of that protected me in that moment. Because what Monica Chen and Derek Walsh saw wasn't a doctor or a fellow human being in distress. They saw a Black woman making demands, and they responded with contempt. She paused, looking directly at the two former flight attendants. They couldn't meet her eyes. I don't want revenge, Amara said. I want change. Real, systemic change that ensures no woman ever has to beg for medical help while being threatened with restraint. I want an aviation system that values human dignity over convenience, that prioritizes health over schedules, that sees passengers as people deserving of care and respect. Senator Hernandez leaned forward. Dr. Williams, if this legislation passes, and I believe it will, how do we ensure it's actually implemented? How do we prevent this from becoming another set of rules that get ignored? Enforcement, Amara said firmly. Real consequences for violations, public reporting of incidents, regular audits, and involvement of medical professionals in training programs, not just airline executives creating protocols from the top down. Another senator spoke up. Ms. Morrison, you're here representing the airline industry. What's your response to Dr. Williams's testimony? Eleanor Morrison stood, and when she spoke, her voice carried genuine contrition. Dr. Williams is absolutely right, about all of it. The airline industry has failed passengers, particularly passengers of color, for too long. We've hidden behind policies and procedures while allowing bias to flourish. What happened to Dr. Williams should never have happened, and the fact that it did reveals deep, systemic problems. She turned to face Amara directly. On behalf of my airline and the industry at large, I apologize, not with words designed by PR teams, but with genuine remorse for the fear, pain, and danger you experienced. We are committed to implementing every recommendation you've made. We will do better. We must do better. The hearing continued for another 3 hours. Medical experts testified. Civil rights advocates spoke. Other passengers who'd experienced discrimination shared their stories. Through it all, Amara sat with Zara, her daughter's small weight against her chest, a reminder of why this mattered so much. When it was finally over, when the cameras had stopped rolling and the senators had departed, Amara found herself face to face with Monica Chen. The former flight attendant looked years older than she had 3 weeks ago. Her face was drawn, her eyes red-rimmed. Dr. Williams, she said quietly, I know I have no right to speak to you, but I wanted to say, I'm sorry, I was wrong, so completely wrong. I let my biases override my humanity, and I will regret that for the rest of my life. Amara looked at her for a long moment. She thought about anger, about grudges, about the easy satisfaction of condemnation. Then she thought about her grandmother, who'd always said that accountability without the possibility of redemption was just another form of cruelty. I appreciate you saying that, Amara said. I hope you mean it. I hope you spend the rest of your life proving that you mean it by speaking out against the kind of bias that almost killed my daughter. Monica nodded, tears streaming down her face. I will, I promise I will. She walked away, and Derek Walsh approached. He looked even worse than Monica, haunted in a way that suggested his world had fundamentally shifted. I don't expect forgiveness, he said, but I wanted you to know that I'm enrolling in cultural competency training. I'm working with a civil rights organization, sharing my story as a cautionary tale. I'm trying to do better. Good, Amara said simply. Don't stop. Outside the Senate building, Marcus was waiting with the car. Sarah was there too, along with members of Amara's hospital team, her mother Patricia, who'd flown in from Atlanta, and a small group of advocates who'd become friends during this whirlwind. How do you feel? Marcus asked as they drove away, the Capitol dome shrinking in the rearview mirror. Amara looked down at Zara, who'd woken up and was staring at her with dark, curious eyes. Tired, she admitted, but hopeful. Real change takes time, but I think we're actually going to get it. Her phone buzzed. A text from Alina Morrison. The board approved full implementation of your recommendations across all our airlines. Training starts next month. Thank you for forcing us to be better. Another text, this one from Representative Martinez. The bill passed committee. It's going to the floor next week. We've got the votes. And another from a medical student at Northwestern. Dr. Williams, I just wanted to say that watching you fight has inspired me to go into maternal fetal medicine. Thank you for showing us what advocacy looks like. Amara felt tears prick her eyes, but they were different from the tears she'd shed on that plane. These were tears of possibility, of progress, of hope for a better future. You know what the best part is? Sarah said from the front seat, reading something on her own phone. Maternal health advocacy groups are reporting a 400% increase in funding applications since your story broke. Everyone wants to be part of the solution now. Attention is cheap, Amara cautioned. Sustained commitment is what we need. I know, Sarah said, but it's a start, and you taught us all how to fight for more than just a start. They drove through Washington as the sun set, painting the monuments in shades of gold and amber. Zara made small sounds, baby noises that were already becoming familiar, already beloved. Amara thought about her grandmother's hands, worn smooth by service. Her mother's strength, forged in adversity. And now her daughter, born in crisis, who would grow up in a world slightly changed because her mother had refused to be silent. Where are you from? Marcus asked suddenly, and Amara realized he was reading from his phone. Your speech. Someone made it into a meme. Where are you from? With a picture of you at the microphone, and then a long line of women who refused to be dismissed. It's everywhere. Amara laughed, the sound surprising her. That's not quite what I said. Close enough, Marcus grinned. The internet has decided you're a hero. I'm not a hero, Amara protested. I'm just a woman who survived something that shouldn't have happened and decided to do something about it. That's what heroes are, Patricia said from the back seat, reaching over to squeeze her daughter's hand. People who survive, who fight, who refuse to let their pain be meaningless. They drove on through the city, past monuments to leaders and movements, past buildings where laws were made and changed and enforced, past history being written in real time. And in the car, in the quiet space between them, Amara held her daughter and thought about the future, about the fights still to come, about the women who would benefit from legislation passed because she'd refused to stay silent, about the flight attendants who would receive better training, who would be taught to see every passenger's humanity, about the cultural shifts that happened slowly, then suddenly, when enough people decided that the old ways were no longer acceptable. 3 months later, the Amara Williams Act passed the House and Senate with bipartisan support. It mandated comprehensive medical emergency training for all flight crews, established independent oversight for discrimination complaints, required regular bias audits, and created significant penalties for airlines that failed to properly respond to medical emergencies. The foundation Amara established with the settlement money, the Zara Williams Foundation for Maternal Justice, awarded its first grants to community health centers serving predominantly Black neighborhoods. Amara returned to work at Northwestern, where her Safe Motherhood initiative had been expanded and was now being implemented in hospitals across the country. And every time she walked through those hospital halls, every time she helped deliver a baby or consulted on a high-risk case, she carried with her the memory of that flight. The fear, the pain, the dismissal, and the determination that had emerged from it. Because some moments change us. Some experiences, terrible as they are, become the catalyst for transformation, personal, professional, societal. Amara Williams's nightmare at 37,000 feet had become a national awakening. And she made damn sure it counted for something. Where are you from? Tell us in the comments below. And if you're loving this story, hit that like button and subscribe for more.